Hello, I am Amy. I am with Bluegrass Green Source, and today I want to teach you how to make a beeswax wrap. This is a way that you can help reduce your plastic usage, and instead of using saran wrap or plastic baggies to hold an onion or your sandwich for work, or even covering a bowl of dish from last night's leftovers, you can instead use these beeswax wraps that have beeswax on them, and that this fabric will then mold to whatever container it is that you're wanting to keep, and it'll keep your food fresh and ready for you to use it next time. So let's show you how to do it. All right, so let me first talk to you about what the supplies are that you're going to need. So one of the first things we want to do is some parchment paper. So this is just stuff that you put under cookies or whatever. We're going to put it to protect our pan. You do need a pan. So this is the biggest pan that I could find at the store without paying a giant amount of money, because you are limited to the size of this as far as how big your beeswax wrap will be. So I have this pan as a really big one. We use pure beeswax. These are little pellets of wax that we'll be using. I got these online, and we'll be using to make the beeswax part of the wrap. I have pinking shears. So these are the scissors with the little divots in them that will help make the fabric, when we cut it, not fray. This allows us to not have to worry about actually sewing the fabric and doing an extra step. So this allows us to make them pretty easily. Now fabric. We are using 100% cotton fabric. That's pretty important to keep it as flexible and useful as possible, especially because we're going to be putting it in the oven as well. I like this pattern. You can use any pattern you want, obviously. You might even be able to use an old t-shirt or something like that as well. So the key is 100% cotton for the fabric. And then finally we'll need a paintbrush. So an old brush. This is my now wax bees wrap brush. I use it for that all the time because it's hard to get the wax out, which is fine if you're using it only for this. Okay, so I've started cutting this, and the size that you want depends on what you want to cover it with. When I give these as gifts, I usually give 3 different sizes, a really big one, and then a medium and a small one, something like for onions or something like that. But again, I'm going to use these pinking shears, and I'm going to cut to this. Today I'm making a big one. So today I'm going to use these pinking shears, and again, it just prevents the fabric from fraying and allows me to not have to sew or anything like that. So you want to make sure that the fabric will fit the size of your pan, which this one does. So we'll put that aside for just a minute. And then next we want to make sure our parchment paper is going to go underneath it. And again, this protects your fat for your pan in the future. So this is a little bit easier, and obviously doesn't really need pinking shears to cut it. So I'm going to use regular scissors. Fun part is to not have it roll up on you. All right, so I'm going to put that there. I'm going to put my fabric that I've chosen over it like this, as flat as possible. Now, in an ideal world, you might want to think about ironing your fabric so it's as flat as possible. It's not the end of the world if it's not ironed, but that is an option. All right, now we're going to get our wax beads. And what I have learned is that less is more in this situation. You can always add more. You can always take off some of the wax beads, but it's a lot easier to add more in the future than to take them off. So we have our oven preheated to 200 degrees, and the idea here is to spread these as evenly as possible. And it's just kind of a trial and error. You want to put them in a light amount on the fabric, but you want to make sure to get everything, including the corners. And this is actually going to soak through the fabric and be on both sides, so that's the good thing. I'm going to add a little bit more, sprinkle it around, and it has a very nice smell. Okay, and then what we're going to do next is we will take this and we will be putting it in the oven to let this wax melt. So make sure it's, again, just as even as possible. And then we will take this and slide it into the oven at 200 degrees. Okay, we have looked in the oven, and most of our bead pearls have melted. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this and take it out. Other way. All right, take it out of the oven. Now, Be careful, obviously, because it's hot. It's been in there about 10 minutes. Obviously, it depends on how thick it is. I'm going to use my brush here to make sure that all these little wax things get brushed out, and each part, including the corners, it's important to have the corners done, is covered. And you can tell it's a little hard probably on the video, but you want to look at it and make sure that you can see it's like wet and kind of moist. And so you want to make sure that it's completely, all of the wax beads have been melted and the whole thing looks kind of wet and moist in order to have it be fixed. And it looks like we used the right amount. I don't think I need to add any more. If you do feel that yours isn't quite wet enough, if there's still places on it that aren't completely filled with wax, then you can always add more and stick it back in the oven for a couple more minutes. It's no big deal at all. If you add too much, it's not too big of a deal either. What'll happen is when you peel this off, because now it's ready, I think you can see it sort of glistening at the bottom. We're going to take this and we're going to let it dry, and it won't take very long for it to let it harden and dry and cool down. But you'll notice that there's a whole lot of it, and the first time I made it, I put way too many beads on there, and I'm just going to let it dry here on the counter over this parchment paper. But I put way too many beads of wax on it, and it was I just had to sort of peel it off. The good news is you can use the wax over and over again. So this light layer of wax that's on the parchment paper right now, we can actually, when it cools off, crinkle it up and put it on the next one. So because what happens is once it soaks through, then that wax is still able to be used over and over again. So we'll show you in just a minute what this looks like once it's cooled. Okay, so now we have it. As you can see, it's pretty stiff, and that's because of all the wax. It'll get a little less stiff and a little more malleable as you continue to use it, but now it's ready to go. It took less than 3 minutes probably for it to cool off and get hard like this. Now, in order to use it, you just take whatever it is, fill it up with your favorite dish, put this over, and you can bend it down there, and it will really stick very well. And again, as it gets used more and more, it will get a little bit more malleable and a little bit more easy to use. A couple things to think about for maintenance. Do not use hot water on this, and therefore, since you're not using hot water, obviously if you use hot water, that wax will melt again and go down your drain, and we don't want that, for one. But for two, if you're not using hot water, we don't want you to put anything in it that needs to be cleaned really well. No meat, things like that. I use this to wrap sandwiches, I use it to wrap bowls, or again, fruit that you've used, or onions, or things like that that you want to put back in the refrigerator. But it's really a good versatile thing, and the more that you make it and the more that you use it, the more that it'll sort of meld. Your heat from your hands will really help it meld to the sides of the bowl. So when you're putting it on there, your heat, if you just hold it for a minute, it'll really stick pretty easily on there, and then you can tip it over. Well, it's gonna be hard to show you, but you can tip it over and it won't fall off. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you're able to enjoy it and enjoy your beeswax wraps.